Gratitude, a contrast of Western and Asian perspectives. In this video, I'd like to explore a bit the differences in perception and expression of gratitude in Western and Asian cultures. And while there may be some overlap, there is a distinction in how gratitude is perceived in these respective cultures. So for starters, I'd like to start off with a definition. What is gratitude? Gratitude, as defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, is the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness, a warm feeling of goodwill towards a benefactor. And this definition is interesting because it really does encapsulate both perceptions of gratitude in both cultures, Western and Asian. And I'll be speaking about these things in really broad terms. You might, as I'm speaking about Asian culture and Asian perceptions of gratitude, you might think, well, being in the West, I see it the same way, and there is a bit of that. But generally speaking, there is a distinct way of viewing gratitude, and also in the way that it is expressed. So the first part of the definition, the quality of being thankful and a readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness, really does encapsulate what the Asian idea of gratitude is, especially that they want to show appreciation and they want to return the kindness. There is this idea, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later, that when someone does something kind to me, I want to return that kindness. There's this sense of indebtedness, especially in Asian cultures, this sense of indebtedness that I want to repay good that has been done towards me. And generally speaking, the last part of the definition does apply to a more Western perspective on gratitude, that it's a warm feeling of goodwill towards a benefactor. There's this feeling of appreciation. So the next thing I want to touch on is that gratitude is really a universal value. It's something that is very much a part of culture in the West and also has a long history in culture in the East. When you look through literature, old and new, you see this idea of gratitude really coming up in both cultures, and that culture has been influenced for a long time by this idea of gratitude, and that it's a value that's really upheld as being a noble characteristic and something to express and something to attain to. Many Western ideas and schools of thought can be traced back to ancient Greek philosophers. Men who lived over 2 millennia ago continue to be quoted, and their ideas have helped to shape and form the philosophy, culture, and personality of Western thought. From these ancient times, gratitude was seen as indispensable to a virtuous life, and as the fountain from which all other virtues flowed. Cicero said, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others." Plato was quoted as saying, "A grateful mind is a great mind, which eventually attracts to itself great things." Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." In the East, you have their counterparts. Men like Confucius, who said, "It is better to light one small candle of gratitude than to curse the darkness." Lao Tzu, who said, "Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are." Buddha, who was a great influencer in Eastern thought, said, "Let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let us all be thankful." Another interesting study is looking at the etymologies of thank you in different languages, looking at the words that people use to express thanks in these languages, and seeing the background and the history of where these terms come from. For example, in Mandarin Chinese, 谢谢 is the common term for thanks and means thank you. It's just a general term that people use these days to express thanks. But the word 谢, the single character 谢, also carries this connotation of apology and refusal. There's this idea in Eastern thought of, that I realize that what you've done is a sacrifice for me, that I've inconvenienced you in some way, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you had to be inconvenienced by me, and there's this polite refusal that you don't need to do this. But it also expresses that I see that what you've done for me is something of worth, and so I'm in a sense I'm sorry that you had to be put out by me in some way. So it shows the worth of the person. It shows the worth of the deed that they did for you, and in a sense, coming to them with an apology or a refusal in a way exalts them and shows them as being something of worth. In Russian, spasiba comes from an old Latin term that means God save you. Sorry, did I say Latin? It's an old Russian term that means God save you. And so when they're saying spasiba, that it comes from this idea of you've done something good for me, and I wish you well, and I wish that God would bless you for what you've done for me. English, we say thank you. Thank you is the one that comes from a Latin word. It comes from a root tong, which means to think. And loosely translated, someone has suggested it could mean that I will remember what you've done for me. And so that's kind of the idea that's there, is what you've done for me is something meaningful, and I'll remember you, and I'll remember what it is that you've done for me. So there's this idea of you've done something good for me, and I really appreciate something that's going to stick in my memory. In Hindi, dhanyavad is the word that people use to say thank you, and it means auspicious speech. And so again, just this idea of you've done something very well for me, and I hope that something good happens to you because of your good deed towards me. And so it's interesting looking at these words, looking at the etymologies, and you can kind of catch this sense of how thank you is viewed differently in different cultures. Next, we're just looking generally at gratitude in Eastern collective societies. So looking at the culture in the East and how gratitude looks different in a collective society versus an individualistic society. And people have generally split different cultures up by their varying degrees of collectiveness or individuality. How much people are seen as being individuals or as being a part of a community. So in the East, generally speaking, a lot of cultures are seen as being collectivists, meaning that people view themselves as being part of a community, and people are just one unit of a whole. And so just want to look at that a little bit and how that relates to gratitude and how gratitude is perceived and expressed. So first of all, a collective society is one that emphasizes the needs and will of the whole community rather than that of the individual. So in many different aspects of culture, it's the community that's taken into consideration, and not necessarily how it affects the individuals, but the end goal is that the community is furthered and that good is done for the whole society. In a collectivist culture, the identity of the individual is wrapped up in their relationships with other members of their community. And so that's how these people are viewed, as you are a part of us, and what you do affects us. And so people are generally not quite so free to express their own opinions or to even plan their lives the way that they want to. Everything is in light of the community, and that could be your neighborhood, it could be your country, it could be your family. but just all of these different collective units that you are a part of a group, and that's often how the individuals see themselves as well. So they're not just an individual, but they are a part of a group, a part of an ethnic group, a part of a national group, a part of a family. And you often see a clash in ideas and in cultures when people from the West, from more of an individualistic society, which we'll get into a little bit later, come in contact with people from a collective society. Sometimes there's a bit of a misunderstanding as, why are you not free to just choose your own way or to do your own thing? Why do you always have to consult with members of your group or whatever? Um, and so you see people, even adults, making decisions in their life based on the will and desires of their extended families and parents and so on, because those types of relationships are valued. People in these communities tend to view themselves as parts of a whole rather than as independent entities. And so how does that relate um, to gratitude? In expressing thanks verbally, it's not commonly done in close relationships because it's seen as a formality. And so when you're viewing yourself as being a part of someone else, there's not a need to be formal with one another, and that's kind of a characteristic of close relationships in a lot of Eastern cultures, Indian and Chinese cultures, and other Eastern cultures, is that when we are close, we don't need to be formal with one another, and so the more the more blunt and straightforward we are with one another shows the closeness that we have with each other. And so sometimes expressing a lot of thanks um, can create distance in relationships because it seems as though I'm trying to be formal with the person that I'm thanking. And if I'm being formal with them and if I'm bringing those types of formalities into our communication, it seems as though I'm trying to create some distance between us and that there's not intimacy, but rather distance in our relationship. And so it's actually can have a negative effect. Expressing too much thanks can actually have this effect that it's expressing the idea that I don't feel that our relationship is close, and that we can let our hair down, so to speak, in each other's company. So gratitude is viewed as indebtedness. Um, so when when someone does something good towards you, for example, parents having taking care of their children during their growing up years, children feel a sense of indebtedness to their parents. And so in a lot of Eastern cultures, you find a lot of children who take care of their parents in their old age. And that's because they feel this gratitude to their parents, which is coupled together with an indebtedness. So not only do they appreciate what their parents have done for them throughout their lives, but they feel that I need to return that kindness to my parents. And so that's definitely a positive thing. And these Eastern and Western perspectives of gratitude, it's not that one is right and one is wrong or one is better than the other, but um, there's definitely good things in both perspectives. In Chinese, there's a saying, "To tao bao li," which means receive a peach, give a plum. And it's something that's often quoted in connection with gratitude, that when someone gives you something good, you ought to give them something good in return. And so that kind of it's a little proverbial quote that kind of captures their heart in uh, the idea of gratitude. So gratitude in Western individualistic society. So first of all, again, what is an individualistic society? It's one that focuses on the needs and rights of the individual, and you see that a lot in Western society is people lobbying for freedom of expression. I want to be who I want to be, and nobody can tell me otherwise. And there's definitely positive and negative aspects to this focus on individuality. So there is this strong feeling of freedom and autonomy in in a lot of Western societies. Personal advancement is valued over the advancement of the group. And so when you set out on your own, and this is kind of uh, encouraged in Western society, is go out and make a name for yourself and do well for yourself. And you see self-made people, people who go out and start from the ground up and make a life for themselves. And those sorts of things are encouraged. Um, no one's going to look after you. You've got to look after yourself, and so you got to go and do it on your own. And that's not seen as a negative thing. It's seen as a good thing, and it makes a strong individual. It builds strong character, and it makes the person strong. Yes, so there's this emphasis on autonomy. Decisions may take others into account, but the ultimate decision is up to the individual, and people are free to be who they want to be. So how does that affect gratitude and the expression of it? So in expressing thanks verbally, it's done frequently. Because people see themselves as being individual, because they see themselves as being separate from other people, there is a lack, in a sense, of closeness, in the sense that Eastern cultures feel it. And so there is this idea is that I want to express my thanks to you because I appreciate what you have done for me. And in contrast, that's seen as sort of an odd idea in Eastern thought, and we'll see that a little bit later. But um, one person even said that your community is so much a part of who you are. Why would you thank yourself? But in Western thought, that it's quite different because you're autonomous. Things that you receive and good that comes to you is always from outside of you, and so there's this idea that I want to express thanks for what has been done for me. It's a common courtesy in Western society. Children are taught from young on to mind your manners, say please and thank you, and those things are taught as soon as children are able to speak, and it's something that's expected from even children, from society, that if you're a polite, respectable person, you're going to be saying thank you. It's not bound to social stratification, meaning that old people say thank you to young people, and senior people in ranking will thank their juniors, and so on. And it goes both ways. In Eastern society, there's this idea of a hierarchy where there's this ladder, and you are at one place on the ladder, and there's people beneath you, and there's people that are above you, and you need to know who to show respect to at all times, and it doesn't flow the other way around. And so for someone above to say thank you or to express thanks to someone beneath them is seen as stepping down from your rung, and it just goes against their ideas of showing respect and so on. And as well, in Western culture, saying thank you has become, very often, it's a matter of habit that is without feeling. And so you have people saying thank you for every little thing, and because it's just been so ingrained in people to say thank you, that often it's done without feeling. And in contrast, in Eastern societies, very often when thanks is expressed, it's very meaningful, it's very deep, and people are taking thought in their expression of gratitude to other people. So gratitude is viewed as appreciation. It's in a lot of ways, it's a very simple thing, just that I appreciate and I'm acknowledging that you've done something good for me. In June of 2015, Deepak Singh wrote an article for The Atlantic titled, "I've never thanked my parents for anything." In the article, he stated that after moving to America, it took some time and adjustment to get used to saying thank you so much. He expressed that when in India, where he is from, intimacy and relationships are highly valued, and intimacy is shown by stripping away formality and by showing familiarity, you express that you're comfortable with that person. After being in America for some time, he visited his uncle and thanked him for inviting him to his home. Deepak describes how a look of hurt feeling came over his uncle's face, and he realized how it had hurt his uncle that he was treating him in a formal way when they had had such a close relationship. While saying thank you is good in Indian culture, it's intimate relationships that are valued over those polite formalities. And gratitude is more deeply expressed by your reciprocated kindness, loyalty, and respect. In China, an example can also be drawn from an article in The Atlantic. It was actually written in the same month. Someone responding to the previous article spoke about a similar experience in expressions of gratitude in China. This woman, Deborah Follows, who wrote a book called Dreaming in Chinese, explains how she was surprised by people's lack of saying 谢谢. And that the way that the Chinese spoke to each other often sounded very blunt and overly straightforward, but what may seem overly blunt to Western ears is actually an expression of closeness in the East. And she was the one who quoted a friend when she asked them about this, about the lack of expressions of verbal thanks. Her friend had responded by saying, "We're part of each other. Why would you say thank you to yourself?" So in summary, gratitude is a universal value. It's been a characteristic that has been instilled within cultures East and West for millennia. And that how gratitude is expressed in different cultures is influenced by the degree of individualism or collectivism of that culture. And though the expressions and perceptions of gratitude are different, they are both valid and valuable. And so to all of you who have stayed with me through this video and have watched to the end, thank you.